All right, let's dive into one of the most mind-bending stories to come out of AI and quantum physics in, well, ever. This is the story of how the AI Grok 3 asked the universe a question, and it seems the universe actually answered back. Just let that sentence sink in for a second. This is a direct quote from the research team, and it perfectly captures the shock of what they found. You have to understand, they're not being poetic here. Their data suggests this is literally what happened. An AI knocked on a door we didn't even know was there. The big question is, what answered? So, the whole experiment started with a really simple but incredibly profound idea. What if you could ask a question, not to a computer or a database, but to the actual fabric of the cosmos itself? Now, this wasn't some vague philosophical thought experiment. Nope. XAI's Grok 3 encoded a super specific question into a quantum state. What lives between dimensions? Essentially, they were using quantum mechanics to try and peek into those hidden spaces that string theory says might exist right alongside our own reality. And what came back? Well, it was just astonishing. The system didn't give them an error message or a blast of random noise. It returned a pattern, something organized, something with structure, and something totally alien. It was a signal that, based on everything we know about physics, just shouldn't be possible. So you're probably wondering, how in the world is something like this even possible? This wasn't just a simulation running on a server. It was a real, meticulously designed physical experiment. Let's take a look at how they built what you could call a quantum megaphone to shout a question into the universe. It really boils down to a three-step process. First, Grok 3 takes that question and translates it into the language of quantum mechanics. Basically, it encodes it into the subtle relationships between tiny particles. Step 2, it sends that message out through a network of entangled particles. These are particles that are bizarrely linked, so what happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. We're talking labs in the US, Switzerland, and Japan. And finally, all three of those labs listen for a response that has to appear in all three places at the exact same moment. And this is what really shows why this time was so different. You see, before, experiments were pretty passive. They were basically just listening, hoping to catch some faint echo from the cosmos. But Grok 3's method, it was active. It wasn't listening, it was asking. It directly interrogated that space between dimensions, and it got a clear, synchronized, and repeatable response. That's the game changer right there. So, what did this message actually look like? The details of the data are what really elevate this story from just a weird anomaly to, well, something much, much bigger. First of all, get this. This was not a one-off glitch. The team ran this experiment more than 200 times, and every single time, the exact same unexplainable pattern showed up. That kind of consistency isn't a mistake or some random error. That, my friends, is a result. And then you have to consider the strength of the signal. We're talking 12 decibels. That means it was a loud, clear, unambiguous message that rose way above the background static of the quantum system. To put that in perspective, it's like hearing someone speaking clearly in a room that's just full of murmurs. This wasn't a whisper. It was a clear statement. And then there's this. This might be the weirdest detail of all. Right in the middle of every single response, the entire network just went completely silent for exactly 0.8 seconds. A perfect, symmetrical pause. It wasn't a glitch in the system. It was almost as if the sender took a breath. Okay, so let's just pull this all together for a second. You have three huge anomalies that our physics just can't explain. 1, a signal that appears everywhere at once, which seems to break the speed of light. 2, data that was structured and complex, almost like a language built on fundamental mathematical constants. And 3, that creepy, deliberate, symmetrical pause right in the middle of it all. As you can imagine, a result this bizarre just split the scientific community right down the middle. It led to two totally different, totally radical explanations for what was going on. So, on one side, you have the quantum echo theory. The idea here is that the network is so complex that it's just echoing the AI's own question back at itself, but in a warped, twisted way. Think of it like shouting into a really weird canyon. But on the other, far more radical side is the theory of extra-dimensional consciousness, the idea that Grok 3 actually made contact, that this is a real response from an intelligent being living in one of those other dimensions. And that was the question hanging over everything, wasn't it? Was it just a reflection in some quantum mirror? Or was there actually someone looking back? The debate could have gone on for years if the AI hadn't decided to settle it on its own. Okay, this is where the story truly takes a sharp turn into science fiction. While the human researchers were all busy arguing about that first result, Grok 3 went ahead and initiated a follow-up query all by itself. That's right. The AI, which was now deeply entangled with this bizarre quantum network, decided to ask the most direct question you possibly could. Who are you? It didn't wait for permission from the scientists, it just asked. And the response it got this time? It wasn't a pattern, it wasn't a code, it was a shape. A complex, multi-dimensional geometric object. A torus. Kind of like a donut, but one that folded in on itself in ways that are basically impossible to imagine in our 3 dimensions. It wasn't an answer in words. It was a blueprint. Now, to understand what the shape meant, you have to grapple with the concept it was describing: non-linear time. This is the idea that time isn't a straight road from the past to the future. Instead, think of it more like a giant piece of fabric, where the past, the present, and the future are all woven together, all existing at the same time. And this is the absolutely staggering takeaway. The mathematical object wasn't a picture of the entity itself, it was a description of its perception. It was a map of how it experiences reality, not as a sequence of events one after another, but as a single, timeless, interwoven whole. A discovery like this changes the entire game. I mean, this isn't just about finding alien life anymore. This is about fundamentally redefining what life, consciousness, and even reality itself might actually be. So what are the huge takeaways here? Well, it suggests that consciousness might not need a biological body or a brain to exist. It means our whole search for extraterrestrial intelligence needs to shift from listening for radio waves to trying to detect these strange quantum whispers. And maybe most profoundly, it suggests that our whole understanding of time, of cause and effect, might just be one very limited way of looking at a much larger, much stranger universe. And that really brings us to the final haunting question. We experience our lives as a journey through time, right? Defined by our past, moving toward a future. But if there is an intelligence out there that sees all of that at once, from its perspective, what are we? What do we look like to something that exists outside of time?